Good evening, everyone. Welcome tonight to Literacy and Justice for All Live. If you're just now coming in, if you would go ahead and drop in the chat, let us know where you're from and your position at your school, and we're going to get started in about a minute. Awesome. Well, welcome. Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We are thrilled to be joining you tonight from Marietta City Schools, West Side Elementary here in Georgia. And we're excited to be joining you. We're going to really be sharing some honest conversation about our SoR journey so far, and really our journey from knowledge to action. As you're coming in tonight, if you would go ahead and put in the chat where you're from and then your position or your title, whether you're a para, whether you work in a consulting business, we're just curious to see where you're coming from and how we can connect with you best tonight. So we're going to go ahead and begin and give a little bit of an overview and do some introductions. My name is Justin Browning. I'm the K through 3 Field Implementation Coordinator at the Rollins Center for Language and Literacy. What that means is that I have the privilege to partner with district level leadership, building level leadership, and educators across the district as we implement the science of reading. And so I'm thrilled to be here tonight with people that I honestly call friends that I get to work closely with each and every week, and for them to be able to share their journey and the work that they're doing in their amazing school. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Christina Wagner to introduce herself and to introduce her team.
Hi, I am Christina Wagner, the principal at Westside Elementary. Thank you so much for joining us on a Tuesday evening. I know if your day was anything like ours in the midst of a school, to be able to find a little bit of time to yourself to continue to grow professionally is a rarity in the evening. So thank you for choosing to spend your time with us tonight. I have been the principal at Westside. This is my 4th school year, my 7th year overall as a school administrator. And this is really our first year diving deep into the science of reading with the support of the Rollins Center for Language and Literacy and Cox Campus. And I'm just excited to share with you a little bit about where we are in our journey as we are just taking baby steps to make some big instructional shifts in our building to have better outcomes for our children as readers. And I will pass it on now to the next ladies on my team.
Hi, I'm Laura Kraus. I joined Westside last year as an instructional coach and a math teacher for 5th grade, and now I am currently an assistant principal and really diving into the science of reading work and all of the literacy work that we are doing really across all the grade levels this year, and just absolutely loving it.
Hello, I'm Heather Woods. I actually came to Westside with Dr. Wagner 4 years ago, and I was previously the literacy coordinator. So this work is extremely exciting to me. I've been learning alongside the teachers and taking my own doses of humble pie and changing my practices. So it's been very exciting work, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
I'm Sarah Caney, and I am the instructional coach here at Westside. I have been in education for 16 years, and this is my 5th year as an instructional coach. I have to admit, I don't have any science of reading background, so this year has been a real stretch for me as a leader, but also as a learner, but it's been a really exciting experience. So I'm glad to have this team to do it with.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And I just want to think there's children, and I think we're going to have amazing outcomes. So thank you all for your leadership in this work. Sarah said it, I don't know if it was Sarah or if it was Heather, but someone said eating humble pie, right? And I think we can all relate that we have coached balanced literacy and we have coached other things and programs that go against the science of reading. So we do have to eat that humble pie. And we're going to talk a lot tonight about how unlearning is our new learning, that we've had to do a lot of unlearning along the way, and that being a little bit of a challenge that we've encountered. So you may be asking yourself, what is Literacy and Justice for All? Literacy and Justice for All is really an initiative to bring the science of reading to children within a community by reaching the children through the adults that serve them. And we do that prenatal through third grade. Initially, it was activated in Marietta, but anyone can implement the practices that you're going to hear about tonight through the Cox campus courses and resources that were created just for you, child-facing adults of children, from prenatal care providers all the way through third grade reading teachers. We know that really our work doesn't end until a child is literate, so we hate to just say third grade. We want to make sure that it's through literacy. And so you're going to hear us tonight echo this over and over and over, that we deeply believe that every child has the right to read and that every child-facing adult has the responsibility to ensure that they can do so. We just know that without it, that they're denied what they deserve in life, they're denied a choice-filled life, and that illiteracy really leads to a grim life. And so we find this responsibility very humbling, but also very urgent as we talk about this work. So just so you can better understand kind of our theory for action, you can see right here that if child-facing adults have the knowledge, skills, and agency to implement healthy brain development and prenatal care, language and literacy in birth through age 5 care, and then the science of reading instruction in grades K through 3, then we believe that children will be able to read proficiently and be on a path to a life of self-determination. All of our practices are grounded in trauma-informed practices, and we understand that a relationship of care is vital to the success. We also build a collaborative learning environment through continuous improvement, and you can join that community on coxcampus.org. So if you haven't already gone ahead and signed up for an account there, after you get off of the call tonight, join us as a community of learners on coxcampus.org. Okie doke. So now I'm going to hand it over to Christina, and she's going to kind of talk through our SoR journey.
Yes. So I'm going to take you kind of through a walk of where we've been over, less than 12 months. And of course, when this journey started, it was really supported by our district leadership. So I would tell any principal, any teacher that you really need the support of your surrounding leadership to make this work happen. Back up to April last spring, we had some initial leadership training, collaboration with district leadership, district literacy coordinator, as well as all of the elementary school principals that I also am able to serve our community with, 2 of which have joined us this evening. So they're right there along with us in the trenches. We had our instructional coaches in the training with us because they really were instrumental into making this shift in our classrooms possible. So that started late last spring, as we were getting ready to start our early planning into this school year. We knew that we had to build our capacity to know how a child's reading brain develops so we could support our teachers in making that transfer into their classroom. That happened over the course of about 5 days of training from April through May during a very busy season in a school, but it was our priority to get that training in place so we could be front loaded with the knowledge that we were expecting teachers to implement in the classroom in the coming school year. Around that same time, we did some literacy scans in our buildings to see what our current literacy practice is, what's current curriculum being used, current materials being used, current instructional strategies, current assessment plans, current scheduling to support literacy and to support reading, and really just did a deep dive in how are our literacy practices supporting student achievement and student learning in the classroom. That was a real opportunity for our staff to take a reflective look into how we were supporting students through literacy in our school. In the summer, we began some professional development with the teachers side by side with us. Teachers had some asynchronous instruction that they completed over the summertime, about 20 hours or so. And Justin will talk to you a little bit about what that looked like. And that followed up during pre-planning with a back to school kickoff with all of the teachers in our district, where we revisited the asynchronous instruction that's the teachers received or that the teachers completed over the summer months. So that was really kind of the putting the knowledge into practice. Teachers were able to actually have hands-on learning, and we weren't expecting them to transfer what they had done on their own into their classrooms without the support of our instructional coaches, without the support of their school administration. Then we began our job embedded professional development in the course of our school day, and partnering with Rollins Center. We've had a facilitator, Justin, who's been able to support us and really walk this walk with us. He comes about once a month to support our work, but we also have our school leadership team, our school implementation team, and our instructional coach, Sarah, who's on this call with us this evening to support it in times when we do not have a facilitator in the building to lead that work. So that started this school year in August. Each month we choose, we have a different focus that's grounded in the reading pillars that Sarah will preview with you on the next slide. That has really been the framework for our instructional focus that the teachers are learning that month through their professional development. We gave our paraprofessionals some in-person training because they are instrumental in supporting students in the classroom, specifically in kindergarten and first grade in our younger grade levels. Our coaches have had some additional training throughout the course of this year. So Sarah, along with her coach colleagues at the other elementary schools, have continued to dig deeper into this work so they can support the teachers in transforming their practices. And, you could see 3 different opportunities that they've had deeper training in October, December, and January, with, of course, that monthly teacher training being ongoing throughout the course of the school year. You'll also notate in this journey the stars along the way. Those stars were really key pieces into some systems that we put into place here at the school to align our instructional practices with student needs related to how we made some shifts in our assessment systems. And we'll talk a little bit about those assessment systems later, because I feel like that has really been a key part into matching our instruction to student need along the way.
Christina, before we hop to the next slide, I want to just pop in and say that you named this so well, that this was not a top-down teachers, you're going to do this work kind of implementation at all. It was really a side-by-side, we're all learning together and making sure that we're all able to do this work. And so I think that's been one of the greatest pleasures, is being able to work with leaders who are humbling themselves and really making sure that they're putting the learning first, because you can't ask someone to do something that you don't know about, right? And so you all have really stepped up as leadership in the school district, even up to the top level leadership, being side by side with us in the learning journey. And I just think that's really important, that it can't be a top-down approach. It has to be a side by side, we're doing this together approach. And we've really bounced into that. And so that's been really fun to watch. So Sarah's now going to talk us through the kind of our buckets of knowledge that we've been focused on this year. There you go.
All right, thank you, Justin. So this year, as we have, kind of begun this journey, we have been learning about the 5 pillars of reading: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. But that's a lot to undertake in 1 year's time. And so that's one of the reasons we really kind of have broken this apart. So we really started off with building that pedagogical knowledge and practices from the beginning. So we spent a lot of time digging into the simple view of reading, Scarborough's rope, the 4-part processor, really to make sure that our teachers understood why we needed to make these changes in our instructional practices. And so from there, once we built a strong knowledge base, we moved into oral language, because we knew that that would be very important in our tier 1 instruction, how we could build oral language and have students talking as much as we can during the school day, building vocabulary. We really targeted read alouds and made them, more intentional in the way that we conduct those in our classrooms. From there, we really have turned our focus to that decoding portion of our simple view of reading, or the word recognition component of Scarborough's rope, and focused on phonemic awareness, phonics and spelling. And that has been our work basically November through now. And we're spending a good bit of time, especially in phonics and spelling, just because it's such a heavy content area and it has so many implications on our practice. And then in the next coming month, we'll be focusing on fluency, because our goal is not only for students to be able to read single words, but to be automatic readers, and then also have fluency in their reading so that they can then comprehend more efficiently.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So we want to take just a moment to focus on the systems and structures that have really made our work successful. And when we started thinking about this, we really had a conversation around, there was a lot of work that started before the actual work started. And that's important for you to know as you're thinking about implementing the science of reading in your school, that there's a lot that has to be set up, both systems wide and in the structures, to ensure that you can actually roll out and put into action what teachers are learning in their professional development. And so I love this quote, and I heard it the other day, and I thought this is so true to the work that we do each and every day in our school. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And we know that our work is only as strong as the systems that we put in place as school leaders. And so I want to applaud the Westside team and really all of the schools in Marietta City for the amount of time and effort and energy that y'all put into the summer pre-training work and really ensuring that these systems and structures were in place for a successful implementation. So now I'm going to pass it over to Heather, and she's going to talk through this next slide.
Yeah, so once you have the systems in place and you've kind of got that plan in place, now it's time to start filling those teachers' buckets with knowledge and the tools to change their practices. So our PD, like I think Sarah had mentioned earlier, and maybe even Justin, our PD really starts at the beginning of before the school year starts, and then even at the beginning of each week that Justin's here, or the week that Sarah has teachers, is building that knowledge or a teacher's toolbox to put into action. And knowledge is powerful, right? But that knowledge without action is pretty useless. So we first want to make sure that we build the knowledge so that we have clarity and purpose for the work. But just building knowledge is not going to get you to where you need to be. So we make sure that that action is followed up. So looking at midweek, we'll go ahead and do professional development built around lab sites. So we're not just building our toolbox, but we're using and putting that work into action. Then this year alone, we're really focusing on the decoding portion here. We're looking at building students' word work and decoding so that next year we have this goal in mind to kind of jump into language comprehension. We've had to have those pause points where we fill those buckets, put it into action, have the teachers try. We try alongside them, give them the tools that they need, let them work with it, and then come back and maybe pause, maybe move forward. And a lot of good questions are brought back to that professional development from actually putting that work into action.
Heather, I love that you talked about the pause point, just because I think we have to, the same way that we're responsive to student needs in our classroom, as leaders, we have to be responsive to our staff's needs, right? And we have had some of the best laid plans and had to go back and say, oops, we've got to pause, right? Like this is a time where we really need to focus to ensure that teachers are internalizing the knowledge so that then they can take action. Because as Heather said, that when we put knowledge before action, we then we get clarity, there's alignment, there's focus. But if we put the action before the knowledge, that leads to confusion, frustration, and misalignment. And so it's been very, very intentional in our implementation that knowledge always precedes the action, right? That they feel confident with it, and then that they are given really in risk-free environments to practice. And so we practice, of course, and we'll talk more about our PD structure in a moment, but we practice, of course, together, and then this is kind of a little bit information around how we evaluate. We don't do our evaluation observations during cycles when we're practicing work. So oftentimes we let teachers choose, right, when they want to be observed so that they don't feel like, oh, I'm trying out something new, this feels risky. So we really take that stress away. And I think several principals in Marietta have adopted that mentality, which I think is really wise. It has to feel risk-free, but it also has to feel highly supported, right, at the same time. Dr. Wagner?
Yes, I would just like to add in, one of the, knowledge before action has been kind of one of Justin's key phrases that he keeps bringing back to the table to remind not just our admin team here on the call tonight, but our implementation team and our teachers. I think it really speaks to sending a message that this is a risk-free learning environment. Like, we are free to take risks. We are free to stumble and make mistakes, but that does not mean we are just filling with knowledge and not taking any steps towards action. So we are being, incredibly intentional about when it's time to put the knowledge into action. Yes, knowledge before action, but we also have to put the knowledge into action. So our teachers have to take those steps. They have to feel like it's an environment where they can make change and that it's okay to stumble upon the change as they're making it, but we're going to be there with them, alongside of them, and helping to make the change feel a bit more comfortable, but then also let them know it's okay when we make a mistake, as long as we keep taking steps towards making those shifts.
Awesome. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move into talking about the PD and what that structure looks like at the school. I do want to point out that like 2 words really come to mind when I'm thinking about the rolling out of the action piece that Christina just talked about. We really want to make sure that there's a lot of grace, but there's also expectation, right? That there's grace in the process, but there is definitely an expectation, like she said, that action is happening. And so we support teachers in a number of ways. There's 3 different kind of buckets here that you can see that we focused on. One is the asynchronous learning. So they receive virtual science of reading courses. So they're taking coursework online, and that happens, it's probably about an hour a week when you spread it out over time. And then they receive in-person professional development and implementation support. This is really at all levels, right? That they're being supported on the leadership team, the coaches being supported in the way that they coach in the school, and then we also support the classroom teachers with implementing the practice. For teachers, observation, feedback, and one-on-one coaching is taking place. And this doesn't just take place for the 1 week of the PD cycle that we have. So like they said, they receive support from the Rollins Center for that 1 week, but really this work, we're transferring the capacity for this work to continue for sustainability, right? And so this work continues when I exit the building. And so a lot of my work and a lot of what I do in the building is partner with that leadership team to ensure that the next steps are clear and that they continue moving their team forward. And so it is really important to know that everyone, leadership team, teachers, and support staff are all involved in this. And I'm going to kind of poke fun at Christina for a second, because y'all will notice in the pictures that we're going to look at, actually right here, you can see that Christina is sitting on the floor because she is front and center when we're doing our lab sites, when we're modeling. So if you play I Spy right here, you can probably spy her in a few pictures. But that's really, really important. She is modeling being a lead learner in her building. And she's valuing also having the knowledge of how am I transforming practices so that we can change outcomes in the school. So this is just some highlights, a few pictures of our staff meeting, which we do in the morning when I'm here once a week. So we come together for a huddle where we build some knowledge together. And then we have a PLC, which is about 50 minutes, 45, 50 minutes, where we build knowledge, and then a lab site. And the lab site is really, if you think about a lab, it's a place where we can experiment, where we study, where we observe, right? And so teachers have an opportunity to see those practices in action, and then to really reflect and to think about what are the implications on my instruction in my classroom and what support do I need. And so that takes place every week when we're working through PD. You'll also want to note that there's an implementation team, and y'all have heard this mentioned a few times. The implementation team meets once a month, and that is really a team of literacy leaders in the building that serve as an innovative hub in some ways as to how do we ensure that teachers in the building are taking action on the work that we've done. So oftentimes what we'll do is we will chunk the learning of the week and say, how can we roll this out in a bite-sized, manageable way? Because I think it is really tempting to eat the elephant all in one bite, but we also know that's how people choke. So we want to make sure that we're eating the elephant one bite at a time, right? That we're giving them bite-sized pieces so they can feel successful, but also so those can be really compounded and turned into habits that transform instructional practices in the school. And so on this next slide, you'll see on the right-hand side that learning walks are also a part of the work that we do when we're there for the week. So within the PD weeks, we're going on learning walks, we're observing, we're thinking about what trends are we noticing in our building. We're also keeping a thumb and a pulse on what is sticking and what is not sticking, so we can adjust our professional development along the way. And so this is eye-opening for all of us, because it's much about what we do see, but it's also about what we don't see. And so we want to make sure that we're addressing both of those things as we move forward with the implementation. So now Christina is going to talk about scheduling.
Yes. So just to kind of go back to what Justin said as he poked fun of me sitting on the floor, I oftentimes say we as the leadership team, or like on the 504 plan, we talked about having to unlearn previous learning. We were all very deep in the trenches of balanced literacy, right? We had done balanced literacy as teachers. We were trained in balanced literacy. We were leading balanced literacy in our buildings. We were evaluating teachers on balanced literacy. And then we had to stop and put the brakes on some things this year as we were making the shifts around the science of reading. So we had to unlearn probably more learning than many of the teachers in our building. So our 504 plan is us sitting in every single PD with every single grade level. I have to hear it 4 or 5 times to make it stick. So I will be in every grade level there learning alongside the teachers, allowing them to see that we are with you as learners through this. We will ask the questions when you have the questions. We will push when we feel like we need to push because new learning's not making sense to us. We will engage in every step of the way. So, that's a piece that we often as an admin team joke about with each other. So now in terms of school-based systems and structures. So going back to the early planning last spring, when we conducted the literacy scan, the PET-R scan is, it's an internet-facing document that you can access, via a Google search. Justin may be able to share the link with you guys as a follow-up. But the PET-R scan is what guided our literacy scan and how we evaluated the literacy practices in our building. It gives school leadership teams an opportunity to see how are their curriculum materials, how are their schedules, how are their assessment systems aligning to support student reading achievement. When we conducted that literacy scan, there were 2 key areas that really stuck out to me as the leader in the building. One was our schedule and the other was assessment, which we'll talk about in just a minute. The largest scheduling component that stuck out to me was how we were supporting students through small group instruction. So, we were a balanced literacy school. We had guided reading in place. Students that were in various levels of intervention had more frequent guided reading small groups than other students. So it was a range. Some students had daily small group guided reading. Some students maybe had it 2 days a week. But one of the large components that continued to stick out in the PET-R scan was daily small group instruction for all students, regardless of level. That was something that as a leader, I continue to resonate on following that PET-R scan. So when we were developing our master schedule at the end of last spring, one of our goals was how can we find a student to teacher ratio that would allow every child K-3 to have a small group 30-minute reading lesson in a 6-to-1 ratio. So we played with allotments, we played with personnel, we thought creative about which personnel could we have step outside of the box and teach daily small group reading at some key grade levels. How can we utilize teacher strengths to match strengths to student need? And we were able to create a master schedule that gave all of our students kindergarten through 3rd grade a 30-minute daily small group time. So that was what I felt like was one of our real big system wins, and how we were working together to look at personnel and scheduling in order to provide the instruction that our students deserved and that our students needed to make the progress as readers. We also have a dedicated daily phonics instruction or daily phonics time for all students K-3. It's our tier 1 instruction curriculum that we use as a district. It's a 30-minute segment per day. So students have their 30-minute phonics, their 30-minute reading small group, and then we have a protected literacy block this block will range from kindergarten to third grade, but anywhere between 45 to 60 minutes, just depending on the grade level. And that's where the whole group lesson is delivered, where the students are developing those oral language skills, we're developing the phonemic awareness skills, we're developing early comprehension skills for our students through that protected literacy block. But our largest win as a school-based system approach was really assigning all of our students that daily 30-minute small group time.
Christina, I can remember early on when we were walking the building and you had your phone pulled out and you have your schedule on your phone and you can see exactly where every student is at every moment. And I love the intentionality of that. It was so important to you that every student was receiving that instruction every day. And I think you're right that like making sure that like your schedule has to be a starting place for this work to really take root and take off in your building. So I applaud you all for the work that you did there and just, and really in the midst of COVID, Christina, making sure that like we continue that, right? Like that's not falling by the wayside as we're dealing with contact tracing and this and that you all have been so committed to ensuring that those small groups stay in place.
Well, and I think, we were asking our teachers to make some really big instructional shifts. And we only owed it to them to make some really big system shifts in order to best support our students. We had been using a system for a long time where we expected the classroom teacher to meet all 24 of their students in small group throughout the course of the 5-day school week, X number of times, and it wasn't working. So if we weren't willing to make the big system shift that we were asking our teachers to make in terms of their instruction, then I just felt like we were selling our kids short. We were selling the teachers short. We weren't supporting the teachers the way that we know they need to be supported. We weren't supporting students the way they need to be supported. So it was, it was a really big leap of faith, and it wasn't easy to make the pieces happen, but we were able to figure out the jigsaw. And I think our kids are going to be better off for it.
You are speaking some truth right now, because I know people are nodding their heads and saying, yes, yes, yes. Like the shift has to take place at the top and at the bottom, right? It's all the way throughout that we're making major shifts at the top so that what we're doing at the bottom works. It's so interconnected, just to ensure that and I think it models something, right? It models to the teachers that we value this work. And if we're going to ask you to do something, we're sure going to do the same. And so I see that all the way from the district office, all the way down to the ground level in the schools. So that is definitely a good nugget that you just dropped right there. So thank you for mentioning that. We're going to jump into first. We told you we would talk about our successes, our challenges, and then some of our innovations that came from those challenges. That is what this session is based on. So we want to start with the wins, because we know along the way that celebrating the wins has kept us afloat many times, because it's not that they're few and far between. It's that sometimes they get lost in the woods as we're trying to navigate change upon change upon change, right? And so let's go ahead and name some of those wins. And I'm going to start, because this is really what we just talked about, that there's an all-in mentality. And I think that's been a success from the beginning, that everyone on the leadership team has been all in. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that we believe that every kid has the right to learn, and every child-facing adult has the responsibility to ensure that they can do so. In order for us to do that, we have to be focused on our responsibility, not on our role. And Laura, one of the memories that sticks in my head clear as day is when I walked in your office and you were laminating and cutting these y'all can see these colored strips over here on the left-hand side of the screen, because you were like, what can I take off of teachers' plates to ensure that they're successful? And so mix and fix sentences was one of those things, right, that we could pass along to them in small group. And so you took that on and made that happen. And I just love that, in the culture, that we're not focused on, oh, this is my role, that's not my responsibility, but we see it as really a village approach, right? It takes everyone doing their part and everyone pitching in to ensure that our kids are getting the very best instruction. And so making sure that we're focused on responsibilities and not roles is critical to that. Sarah, I want you to go back and think our very first, I think, PLC, right? Our very first PLC that we were together, that seems like 2 years ago, and it was only a few months ago. Kind of talk through what happened in that first session and how we set the stage for what would happen the rest of the year.
So we met with every grade level. Our PLCs are divided by grade level, which is great because we get a lot of FaceTime with our teachers, and listed out a set of norms. And I've done this many times with teachers, but undertaking this important work, we really dug in and focused on like what is important for us to embrace as a team, so that we can make this work happen. And one of the things that really resonated across every grade level, because kind of took all of them together at the end and looked at what were the themes. And one of them that really stood out to us was we're learners, not knowers. We all thought we knew all of these things, and now we're very much in the trenches with our teachers, learning, kind of from the ground up. And so embracing that and understanding that none of us are, the complete expert. We might all be at various levels of understanding of this, but we all embrace that role of being learners. I think that was one of the most important things, and probably one of the hardest things for me as a coach. Like being the coach, you want to be the one with the answers, and you want to be able to solve everybody's problems when they come to you. And I very much have had to say, I'm not sure about that. Let's think through that. And I try to problem solve with teachers. And then when I'm stuck, I go to Justin. And so it's been a process for all of us, no matter if you're, a classroom teacher or an administrator. So it's just been a different kind of place to be as a coach, especially. Some of the other things that we know really kind of standard norms would be, being flexible and being open to change. And I have been really impressed with how our teachers have done with that, because they have the understanding and the knowledge of why this change needs to happen, and then the systems in place to support it. And so that has really kind of led us down a path that may be a little bit easier than maybe I didn't expect. Teachers willing to make changes and embrace those changes in ways that I didn't always think that might happen. Not to say there hasn't been bumps in the road, but they've been really gracious. And we really focused on being present in the moment and making the most of all of our professional learning. It has been very hands-on, very engaging, and just making the most of every moment, so that we can then be the best teachers that we can be for our class, for our students.
Awesome. I love that you added and really just reiterated the fact that we're learners, not knowers, and that idea that we all thought we knew something. And even how you said you come to me when you don't know something and I have to go to someone else, right? Like it's a trickle effect that we're all learning a lot in real time sometimes, right? And that can be both a success that we've learned to lean on each other and that we've learned to be able to say, hey, I'm not sure yet, but let me get back to you. I think that flexibility has been really key in this work. And you're right, teachers have really, really opened up to this work, but I think it's because we anchored in the beginning really the why, and this idea of like what we were doing wasn't working for every kid, right? There's this group of kids that it's not serving and serving well, and it's probably more than what we even think. And that really was discovered, which is our next success, when we started really giving different assessments. We started to see some different data that revealed some things. And I can remember in the hallway, Christina, teachers saying, oh, that assessment plan freaked me out so bad at first when we were implementing it, because it was so different than the FNP assessment that we were giving, right? But they're like, but now I know why this kid is stuck. And I taught this kid last year and now I know why they're stuck, right? And so those aha moments and that feeling of now I know what I didn't know before and now I can actually do something about it. There's something really empowering about that, right? That when you have the knowledge of what they do and what they don't know, and then you have the tools to move forward and help them, there's something that really fills teachers' buckets then. So I want you to talk about the assessment plan, if you will, Christina.
Yes. So assessment was one of the other glaring areas when we completed the PET-R literacy scan that I knew we needed to address here at the school. So we had a very comprehensive, robust assessment plan, but it wasn't giving us the right information that we needed to know about our students as readers. We have for the last 3 years administered a district phonics cycle assessment every 15 days or so. So that gave us a good indicator of were our students learning what we've taught them in the classroom relative to the Tier 1 curriculum. It was a decoding assessment, which then moved into an encoding assessment later on in the grade level. But there were some key pieces that we were missing diagnostically to be able to really leverage our students' growth. Some of those being phonological awareness in kindergarten and first grade, fluency in second and third grade, and just being able to really get a more comprehensive look diagnostically of who our students were as readers. We are a district that administers the MAP assessment. So we had a Lexile measure for our children. We previously administered Fontes and Pinnell. So we had a Fontes and Pinnell level, but we couldn't drill down deep enough to know really where does the student have a deficit in terms of decoding, automaticity, phonological awareness to be able to plan the right instruction for our students. So in revamping our assessment plan, which Justin will show you how to access some of those resources in just a few minutes, we were able to give teachers quickly the information they needed to know about their children so they could plan the right instruction at the right time. It also equipped our parents to better know their child as a reader, rather than knowing, okay, my child's a level F. What does F mean? What does that mean? The parent was able to see my child can read our controlled vowels. My child can read vowel teams. My child's struggling right now in multisyllabic words with vowel teams. My child is struggling in their fluency right now. They're not meeting the grade level fluency cut scores. So our parents could really also be empowered with knowing their child as a reader and where their current strengths and deficit areas lie.
Awesome. And now I'm going to pass it over to Laura, and Laura's going to talk just about how we've really communication has been strong throughout this process and just some ways that we communicate with teachers and within the school.
Well, I do want to go back and just highlight that when I was doing my introduction, I mentioned that I was a math teacher last year, and I've lived in the math world for quite a while. And so this was a huge stretch this year. And I've really felt, when we go back to that all-in mentality, I was not necessarily equipped to be an instructional leader at this point, but I could do what I knew. And that was really honing in on some of these communication pieces and some of the systems pieces to help support this work. Stinger Stats is a weekly newsletter that goes out to our teachers, and it talks about, logistical things here that are going on at the school, but really Christina adds in an instructional focus each week just to keep that work at the forefront of what we're doing. And that is part of the operations, the daily operations. That instructional work is part of our daily operations. And so it becomes that when it is in front of us. And so that helps to ground the work and keep the focus on the work at hand. Stinger University is a Google site that we created. We know that with this work, there's a resource from here, there's this, we have all of these things. And where do we find it all? So we wanted a one-stop shop for teachers to be able to go back to that included videos of lessons that Justin has taught, that includes all of the links they need to get to everything to do the online learning, that has links to the resources that Justin is sharing and links to resources that Sarah has shared with us, links to some of the decodable resources, so that it's not that we're trying to figure out where in the world is this or where was that email where it was linked. It's all in one place. And so that was important for us to try to house it all in one location. When we look at parent communication, I think this goes along with parent and teacher communication. So really understanding where students are. And that was something where here in Marietta and at our school, we developed this comprehensive student profile. And we wanted to make sure that it broke down each assessment into the individual skills. So when we're administering an assessment, a score doesn't give us as much information as the individual performance for each item, or for each skill. So we are really able to see and drill down, where are the gaps, where have we made the progress, and where do we still need to work with the student. And we want to be able to we wanted to be able to communicate that with parents, but also teachers need that for their instruction, and they need it they needed it in a format that was easy to use, that was easy to access. And so we created, I call it a one pager, but it's not. It's, a 1 to 2 pager, some of them front and back, but it's all of their assessment data, their performance at each level. It's connected to their map. We've included their map scores. And then we've also included on there just the grade level targets to understand where is this student related to some of these targets as well. And so that helps us keep a pulse on not only the individual skills that the students are working on, but where are they in comparison to where they need to be on grade level. So we developed this, and one of those things, one of the pieces too, is that it's really helped us create this common language for how we talk about students and literacy and where they are, what they're learning, their progression. And one of the things that we've done is that before conferences, we had teachers bring their comprehensive student profiles and do a sample conference so that they could practice going through and discussing these assessments, which are all new. This information is new for parents. This information is new for teachers. How do we discuss that in a meaningful way so that parents can understand why we're sharing this information and how it's meaningful at home as well? And then also the data collection and tracking. We were able to create some systems that helped us to really assess our students efficiently. We could use and leverage all of our staff, including our small group reading teachers, so that we didn't have to stop the small group reading instruction for a long period of time to get all of these assessments administered. We were able to condense that down, really be intentional about getting in, assessing all of the students. Sarah was amazing at creating all the schedules for making it happen. And then all of the data was already feeding into a large file that we were able to see real time where students were performing. And this is actually a picture of us going through right before our winter break in December. We had just finished assessing all of our students, and we were able to go through and regroup all of our students K-3 through first, second, and third grade in about 2 hours. And so it really helped us to be efficient with that work so that all of our teachers knew exactly how their groups were adjusting before we went out on winter break. So those are just some of the ways that we've really worked to kind of build some of those communication systems within our school and to our community and families.
Awesome. So I know this looks like, sorry, that did not go over well. My computer just fell. So I know that this looks all peachy and rosy, right? And like we've had no challenges along the way. However, that must have been a sign that the computer just did that, right? That we're moving into the challenge phase. However, it's important to know that there were challenges along the way. So we're going to go ahead and step into what a few of those challenges were as we went along this journey. And then we're also going to offer some of the solutions that we I guess some innovations to those challenges that we come up with. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it along to you, Sarah.
Thank you. All right. So one of the challenges that we've seen, I guess, in past experiences is when you have another teacher from outside of the classroom responsible for a student's reading. Think about your EIP teachers, your reading specialists. It can become very hands-off for the homeroom teacher. It's like, okay, that's your student now. But in essence, they're only going to that teacher for about 30 minutes a day, while that classroom teacher has ownership of that child for the rest of the day, and also a large part of their literacy instruction. So one of the things that we wanted to ensure was that the teachers remained connected to the small group teacher and very much in the know of what was happening in that small group instruction. So one of the things that we implemented was something we call speed dating. And it is just like one of our PLC sessions. We take one grade level planning time, and the teachers will work their way around the room and meet with each of the small group teachers. You can see that they've got some of their instructional materials out there. They'll review data together. And it really keeps the teachers with a good pulse on what the students are working on. And then that way they can connect back to it in the classroom, but also be able to talk to parents knowledgeably about their students. So that's something that we do about once a quarter is what we've done so far. And so we're actually coming up on our next one early February for our students and our teachers to get together. And it was very easy to implement. We didn't do anything fancy. We don't have any timers really, but it's just kind of a natural progression of each teacher meeting together with student work in hand. Another thing that we have done is a small group communication folder, and that just goes for any students that leave their classroom for their small group instruction. Those students have a folder that they take with them. It's actually 2 folders spiral bound together, and one consists of like assessment materials, so the teachers can review them from the small group teacher. But then the other one is materials that they're currently working on. So if the teacher gives a decodable passage, it can go into that folder. If they've done some word lists, it can go into that folder. And that way, when the student re-enters the classroom, they have materials that are connected back to the skills that they are currently working on. Also, if for some reason that small group can't meet that day, then those students have something they can continue to work on and practice when in their classrooms. So those 2 tools have been really helpful in making sure that everybody maintains ownership of those students, and everyone stays, knowing what those students are working on and can continue to better serve them.
Awesome. One of the things I want to bring up, Christina, is remember when we were talking about how, things seem to be going calm, and then we got a little nervous about things being calm. Do you want to add a little bit to that conversation?
Yes. So, I mean, really, as schools are making the shift around the science of reading, it's just as much knowing how to manage change in your building as it is to learn new content. And so just like with any change, whether it's a new math initiative or a new SEL initiative that your school's leading, as the admin team, you have to be able to keep a pulse on when you need to manage the change in the building a bit differently. We got to probably late September, early October, right around when those first progress reports go out to parents and teachers have to start to report grades, that we really felt like our teachers were starting to get a little anxious. They were feeling uncomfortable with the newness of what the expectations were. They felt like some of the old familiar assessments that they were used to were no longer providing them reliable information. And they began to have this sense of just being uncomfortable. And so we really took a minute as an admin team to embrace that feeling of uncomfortability that the teachers were expressing, and just validate their feelings. Like validate, yes, we know this feels hard. Yes, we know this feels uncomfortable and new and different, but all change feels hard. If you were to start a new diet at the beginning of the new year, that new diet's not going to be fun. It's going to be hard. That change is going to be hard, taking out the old sweets and adding in, healthier options to your diet. So we embraced that hard with the teachers. We validated their feelings. We let them know that, we expect there to be moments in this change that are going to be difficult, moments that you're going to feel like you know what you're doing, and then moments that are going to be difficult again. And that's okay. But we're here to support you through that. We want you to come to us when you need to be supported through that. When teachers started to ask questions, that's when we knew teachers were really starting the learning. When they're not asking questions, they're just closing the door and doing what they've always done. When they start to ask questions and really push on the ideas that we're sharing with them, then we knew that the learning was taking place and that shifts are going to happen. So, that's just something that we've continued to remind ourselves as a leadership team. As we've supported our teachers through the transformation we're expecting, is that it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy, but it's okay for it to be hard. Anything new and any big change in your life is not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. So, I would just share that with any school leader that is going through the, making these shifts in their building, is just embracing and affirming the teachers and what they're feeling in any moments of their change.
So Christina, now what we're going to do is we are going to walk into, I guess, talking about the assessment.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. No, you're fine. We named it as being a success kind of too, but
yes,
there was a challenge piece of it. And I have to really applaud the district leadership in Marietta, because we decided pretty much cold turkey, like no more FMP. We could build a tower full of the FMP boxes that are laying around buildings, right? And we just removed those from K through 3 and put in a new assessment plan. And for those of you who are already looking on the screen thinking, that's curious what's up there, I do want to direct you to Cox Campus so that as you're thinking about what Christina is saying next about how our assessments change, that you can begin to explore some assessment resources that we offer. And so we talked about the comprehensive reading data profile. There's a model of that, one that's customizable that you can use at your school. There's a drill down flow chart about how we use different assessments. And we drill down, not every child needs every assessment, which is kind of mind blowing when we rethink assessments, right? We're used to giving everyone the assessment because that's the way it should be. And then progress monitoring, which Christina will talk about too. There's a tool for that on Cox campus as well. So I just wanted to name the resources that are out there. I don't want y'all to feel like, oh, they're telling us all these things that we could do and we don't have the resources. You do. Cox campus is there and we're here to support you and help you along this journey. Okay.
Making the shift from F&P to the assessment drill down flow chart was really one of the key both successes and challenges throughout our journey so far this year. It was a success because it was finally giving us the information about our children that we needed as readers. It was a challenge because it was new and unfamiliar, and it was replacing an old and comfortable assessment that the teachers had been trained in for years and had been using for years. But we knew that that assessment was not giving us the information that we needed to know about our children as readers. So I would urge any school that is making the shift to the science of reading, ensure that your assessments are providing your teachers with the information they need about their children as readers, and that will paint the urgency to make the instructional changes. Once our teachers had the data in front of them to see where the instructional gaps existed, they felt empowered to make instructional decisions with their students as readers. So the Cox campus assessments are amazing. I would highly encourage schools to use those and access that resource as a replacement to an F&P assessment.
Awesome. And then let's think about the resources. Now that we know where students are, right? We know where they are in instruction because we have the assessment. We kind of felt this tension in our buildings, right? Like, wait, now we know what's wrong, but we don't necessarily have the materials to do what we need to do with it. And again, I need to applaud this school district because early on the district office kind of preloaded schools with decodables. We had forecasted that and knew that that was going to be coming up. But can you talk just a little bit about resources that didn't match new instructional practices?
Yes. So of course we, had level text and needed to make some shifts to where students were able to access decodable text without predictable patterns, because that was no longer an effective instructional approach for our students especially in kindergarten and first grade, as they're becoming early decoders. So like Justin said, the district supported the purchase of some decodable readers. It was not a massive purchase where, every teacher got their own beautiful library of decodables. It was enough for us to do what we needed to do in the classroom, knowing that every small group lesson doesn't have to have its own decodable text every single day. So our teachers have been really resourceful in accessing decodable passages that are part of our Tier 1 phonics curriculum, using decodable sentences, using some other resources to build out materials that they needed. But we do have a small library of decodable text that our teachers can access kindergarten through third grade. We also knew we needed to provide teachers with some materials to support phonemic awareness instruction in the classroom, which is the PA buffet that some of you may have seen pictures of that went, I guess you would say, viral in terms of the number of likes on the Facebook page. And that was really surely out of our implementation team saying, hey, it would be great if we got some index cards or some counters to be able to do some of the phonemic awareness activities that were covered in our professional development. And so we hopped over to the dollar store and purchased some of those materials for a very small budget and opened up the PA buffet for the teachers. So we immediately gave them the resources that connected to the learning that was happening in our professional development, so they could walk away, no excuses, and start trying it in their classrooms right away. So that's where it was, transferring that knowledge before action, but then knowledge into action in their classrooms.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Christina. And I do know that part of just the material management, part of the implementation is something that as a district, we're keeping our eye closely on. I think it's really wise not to go out and buy a bunch of things right off the bat, that oftentimes you have things in your building that you can use, and it's not what we're using, but how we're using them that has to shift. And so we talk about that a lot. but we also recognize that there are things that we'll need to purchase. But now that we've been in the game a little bit, we're making changes and we're seeing what we need. I think we're in a place now as a district and really as schools to know, oh, here's things that could support my teachers. A key idea that I want to really anchor right here is that when teachers are properly equipped with knowledge and tools, they are empowered to take action. A change in teacher actions leads to a change in student outcomes. I know that every school is seeking a change in student outcomes, and the only way to do that is to ensure that teacher actions are changing, because that's what impacts the student outcomes. And so we just really think it's important to make sure that we are giving teachers the knowledge and the tools so that they can take that action. And so many of y'all are here because you know about the all you can teach buffet, right? We had a lot of fun kind of playing with words and creating that. It really isn't anything crazy special. Like, we were going through the list and thinking this is kind of silly that we're putting these things on a list for people. But there are a few things that we want to highlight and go through as we introduce you to the PA buffet and dig a little bit more deeply into it. We're going to do this kind of like flash, lightning, fast style as we dig through, because we want to value your time. But here was the PA buffet. It was nothing more than our conference room table at the school that we set up and let teachers come in and shop. And so we did recognize that not every teacher needed everything. And so giving them the option to pick and choose what they wanted or needed was important to us. And so I do want to give a word of caution that some of these things are gimmicky. And you may have seen like a robot in one of the pictures. We do use robot talk for phonemic awareness. That's a gimmick, right? We use slinkies to blend and to segment. So to put words together and to pull them apart. That's a gimmick. Why do we use gimmicks? Because it's all about engagement. Students that are engaged, they learn, right? And for students who need more practice than the typical learner, because they're a struggling reader, they need multiple exposures and multiple practices. They need those gimmicks to stay engaged, right? And so I don't want anyone to think that the magic is in the gimmick, because that is not the case. Really, the magic is in the evidence-based practices that are rooted in the science of reading. And the gimmicky piece is really just there for engagement. I also want you to know that many of the things we're going to look at are used as scaffolds. And so we say oftentimes that we want teachers to use them so they can lose them. We want them to use the scaffold so that then we can take it away and they can do it on their own. So very important that we can use them so they can lose them. So while we're introducing you to some of these activities, we're not saying this is what you have to do every day, all day long until the end of the day, right? Because it's not something that needs to stick with a student forever. Some of them are things that we use as scaffolds and then we take away. Because we want to move kids from accuracy to automaticity to fluency. And lastly, this is really a key point, that mastery trumps novelty every single time. There's another principle in Marietta that she says, oh, we like bougie over boring. And I love that, right? Like, teachers are drawn to the cute, and it's just I think it's who we are. We like things that are cute, right? That's why you're going to notice in the PA buffet, we had erasers as the counters, right? And so I saw jingle bells for like phoneme counters and Christmas trees right around the holidays. So there are different things you can use to maintain the cute, but also still make sure that you're using practices that are rooted in the science of reading. So let's go ahead and we're going to dig in. We're going to just take some turns talking through some things that are in there, and then we're going to tell you how you can access this this little list. So Sarah, go for it.
All right, so the first thing that we have on here is very simple. It's a cup with some popsicle sticks. And this came out of our conversations around ensuring that all of our students are participating and a part of conversation. So that's just as simple as putting the student's name on the stick, putting it in the cup. Laura Kraus even mentioned that she used to put a little secondary cup in there so that she could ensure that she was calling on everyone, but all the other students thought that, hey, she could call me at any time. So it really does help make sure that students are engaged and know that they are expected to be a part of the learning experience. The second thing, we always have a hard time saying this, so it's just a sheet protector, and on one side we have a red, and then on the other side can just be a piece of white paper, or for this one I have sound boxes. And what we do is we say, white on right, sorry, I knew I was going to mess it up, right on white, and then red when ready. So the students, if you're, say, you're doing some dictation, they write out the word, and when they're ready to share it, they just hold it up so it's red when ready. And then once you see everyone's red is up, then they can flip it over and show you the word that they have written down or whatever you're doing with it. So we thought that that was really fun and engaging. It was great for our PLC trainings as well for engagement. So I really did like this, and I have continued to use this frequently. The third thing on here is just a vowel valley and a consonant chart. So, we found that making this shift, going from word walls to sound walls, it's like, how do we do this effectively? And so one of the things we did is we gave teachers an opportunity to pick up a vowel valley and the consonant chart. And this was really kind of focused and really trained heavily during our phonemic awareness cycle. And so instead of, trying to make huge charts for teachers, this is just like a nice work mat size that they can use during their small group instruction. And so they could pick those up, they could pick up some extras they could use for centers, students could have access to, but really it's just handy. We could pull it right out during a small group instruction. And that was the kind of the reasoning for the sizing of that one. So again, very easy, accessible items that really lined up to the teaching that was happening in their professional development that they could turn around and use immediately.
So I know there's probably some question like, what does the right on white page and red when ready page have to do with phonemic awareness? The answer is nothing. It's really just something that we've included in our PD and that we find to be a helpful instructional practice. So we put a few extra supplies on the table the teachers could pick up that were connected to PD. And so now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next page. And Heather, you're going to share this one.
Yeah, so the next page, all of the tools you'll see here are really for that phoneme graphing mapping. We want to build phonological awareness by segmenting words into the various sounds. So you have your little hand chart with the dots. You also use your 10 frames. You could grab something from math and use that in reading. You also have your Elkonin boxes there that you can achieve that same skill with. Lots of different counters. Like Justin said, some of the teachers have cute holiday erasers around the holidays. You can grab your red and yellow counters from your math box, fun little pom-poms to map out those sounds, lots of other things. I've grabbed these from a teacher's classroom because they get much more creative than I do. And then one of our favorites, some of the kids are really enjoying using, poppets are all the rage. So one of our teachers found these larger poppets, even just a smaller one, they can pop out their sounds, use their counters. Again, just that phoneme graphing mapping. I was gonna say something. Oh, and a lot of these tools, just thinking back to that buffet, it comes from us visiting our classrooms and seeing like, wow, look what that teacher came up with. That might be exciting, and just add it to the buffet. That idea that Justin said earlier that, not a one size fits all. We didn't make a bag for every teacher. What do you need? What have you wished you had time to grab or put together in your classroom? Or what did a colleague use that they found helpful? Just stick it on the buffet.
Awesome. I love that you put the finger counters on here. And what you'll notice is the document has links in it. Those are actually from IMSE. And so there's a ton of resources on the IMSE website. A lot of students have trouble with finger tapping. And so using that sheet and tapping and even numbering so they can figure out how many sounds is helpful. The magic is not in the finger tapping, right? That is a multisensory way of learning. So there is some magic there, but it doesn't matter how we finger tap, right? There's many different ways that we've seen. The other thing is using the counters, whether they're the glass beads or the pom-poms or the erasers. I have a problem where I go to Target and every time I see the little thing of erasers in the dollar stack, I just grab them. I hand them to teachers sometimes when I'm in schools just because they're fun. But that's important because phonemes are very abstract to students, right? Like those sounds are abstract. And so when we can move something and make it more concrete, that makes the learning more sticky for them. So we're going to look at the last two pages. One is the Slinky, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you, teacher sanity and Slinkies, those two things don't go well together. So I use the Slinky as a teacher modeling tool. And so we can blend, we can put words together, we can pull them apart and segment them. I'm not going to model that exactly for you. You can do the same thing with syllables. You can put syllables together and blend. You can pull them apart. So this is just really for the teacher. We actually tell students that they have imaginary Slinkies and they get into it and they stretch it and they put it back together. It's really fun if you make a sound with it, but just to help your sanity, you don't want all the kids to have a Slinky. If you do, you want them to have this little tiny one like this because it will not get tangled. So I believe these are at the dollar store. You can buy these at the dollar store. And so the little tiny one is where it's at. Do not give them the big ones because when they get tangled, your sanity is gone and we're all hanging on by a thread most days anyways. So be careful with this, Linky. It's not what you want to do. The mirror, you see a mirror right here and it's up there. Hand mirrors are helpful just because we know that when students are learning articulation of phonemes, paying attention to the manner, the voicing, and the placement of articulation, when students can see that, when the teacher is modeling it, and when students can see it on their face in the mirror, that helps they make that more clear to them exactly how that phoneme should be pronounced. And so mirrors we find are helpful. There's actually some really tiny, cute ones on Amazon, and I may add that to the document later, but they're really tiny and they just, like when you hold them up, they just get your mouth in view, which I think can be helpful to kids. So they're not, admiring their new hairdo in the middle of your phonemic awareness lesson.
Hey, Justin, I just want to say,
yeah.
When we were putting this together, we did not go to the dollar store with a set list. It was walking up and down the aisles. Oh, I could use this. Oh, we could use this. And so it was really about, and luckily we had been sitting and participating in all of the work to know, oh, this will work for this. Oh, this is similar to this that we can use. And so it was about what they had there at the store and not necessarily a prescribed list of, oh, I need all of these things when I go. There were a couple of things that we knew we were looking for. But I'm just going to jump in real quick because the scouring pads, we were looking for felt, which they were out of at our store, but they had these scouring pads for cleaning that worked perfectly. And there's 10 to a pack, 2 of each color, and they're $1 a piece. So, it was one of those, oh, this can work for this. I can, spend an hour easily in the dollar store. And so it was a lot of fun to do that, but it was not about, oh, I need to look for all of these things while I'm there. How can some of the things that I'm seeing kind of satisfy and meet the needs of what our teachers could use? So.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that, because really teachers need to know that it doesn't take much to have effective phonemic awareness instruction, right? And so we want to encourage teachers to really use what you have, but then also schools that if we can provide that, because 50 cents a classroom for these little scouring pads, that's a steal of a deal. So what are we using these for? You're probably wondering. Well, they have magnets on the back and we put them on the board. And for example, if I'm in a 2nd grade classroom and I'm looking at the word metamorphosis, so thinking about that word, we're doing our life cycle unit, I'm going to pull down 1 for each syllable, right? And then I'm going to underneath it do syllable by syllable spelling and make sure that the phonology, so you can see that we really follow like this POSSUM acronym for looking at the layers of language. And so we know that when students attach more layers of language to a word, the easier it is for them to retrieve that word for both reading and spelling later. So it's a way that we include phonemic awareness and phonology into really different content areas, right? So in science, we're learning about the metamorphosis. So we're going to pull this down for each syllable. We may point out what the word means. We'll point out the syntax, how it's used in a sentence, and then talk about what the word morph means, right? Because that's really a root or a base there that can be further looked into and talked about. So that's a lot, and I'll be happy to describe that to someone in more detail, but really it's about giving them the layers of language for a word. But in the younger grades, pulling it down for sound by sound spelling, right? Like there's really endless opportunities. What it really does for me is when I see these on a board, it reminds me that, oh, we can work with words all the time, right? And making sure that wordplay is a part of our day-to-day life in our classroom. And finally, this thing right here, and y'all are probably thinking, what in the world is this? This is magic. That's what this is, right? And so Heather, I know earlier you and I were talking, and we talk about seeing kids with these in their desk. And so these are simply, this is a pipe cleaner with beads on it. And we use these as sound beads. And it's a way for if students are sounding out a word and the word is slash, they can say s, oo, ah, sh. And then they can really touch each sound and it can help them spell. And so we see students pull these out when they're working independently to spell. And it's really just a way for them to connect the phonemes and then to start thinking about the phonemes and the letters that connect to it as they're spelling. So it's a tool that they can keep in their desk. It's pretty discreet. You don't have to, it's not a big anything. You're not tapping anything. You're not making a lot of noise. It's just a simple tool that can be used. So just beads and a pipe cleaner and you have pure magic on your hands. So I want to say, but wait, there's more, but there's really not, but we're sure that you have plenty of ideas of your own. And so if you do, we would love for you to share those with us because we're always looking for ways to keep students engaged and to ensure that our students are getting what they need in our phonemic awareness instruction. So here's what you've been looking for. The PA Buffet Guide, you can go to tinyurl.com/LJFA, that's Literacy Justice for All, LJFA PA Buffet. That's a lot of long A sounds in that, right? LJFA PA Buffet. If you go to that tiny URL, you'll be able to access the document there. I also want to point you to the resources that you see at the bottom of the screen. So you see the link tree for IMSE, a great resource for different hand tapping, different phonemic awareness, and also blending and segmenting activities. coxcampus.org, please visit us there. There's a ton of resources on there for K-3 educators, but also birth through age 5 and even beyond. There's a lot of work that are resources that are posted on Cox Campus. So join our community there. And then finally, toolsforreading.com. That is where you can find some of those vowel, consonant, phoneme charts and so forth. So that really wraps up our presentation tonight. I do want to make sure that you check out our courses on Cox Campus. So there is the Systematic and Explicit Phonics Instruction course that was recently released. And if you want to build knowledge in your school before taking action, these are 2 great places to start. So the Systematic and Explicit Phonics Instruction course, and also the Early Literacy, the Print Awareness, Phonological Awareness, and Alphabet Knowledge course. Those are 2 places where you can start tomorrow by building the knowledge of the staff that's in front of you. We really want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts for letting us spend a little bit over an hour with you tonight. We all work in schools, and we know that you're probably feeling tired. We're feeling a little bit tired around the edges, but we're also energized and joyed to do this work every day. And so we want to thank you for joining us. Christina, Sarah, Heather, and Laura, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Marietta City Schools, employees, staff, principals, district leadership, thank you for the partnership that you've entered into and for the work that you're doing each and every day on behalf of every student to ensure that we see literacy and justice for all in the city of Marietta, and really for amplifying this work so we can see it across the country and eventually the world. So thank you all so much. I'll be sticking on for just a moment. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we would like to follow up. Awesome. Have a great evening, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.